So sourcing specifically as a skill set is going nowhere. It is necessary, right? I mean, you have an open rec, you need to find candidates for it somehow. In the earlier days of the internet, especially once LinkedIn came around, there was a massive demand for people who had those search skills in order to dig up resumes and to dig up people and find people that were great for these roles that nobody else could. But more and more, that is becoming a skill of a recruiter or TA professional and less of an independent career because the softwares and the tools that they have are becoming so powerful. I mean, there's been a big leap in the last couple of years with AI coming into the picture that it's just becoming more of a skill set that all recruiters need, as opposed to like, hey, I sit here all day and generate a bunch of names and people that are good for this job.
Hi there. I am Denise Chaffin, and I am your podcast host for Talking TA. And today I am honored to have with me David Manaster. Did I say that right?
You did, yes. So happy
Yay!
to be here, Denise.
And David is the founder and CEO of ERE Media Inc., which encompasses, and I will let you go into the details about that, encompasses a number of different businesses. So, David, I will let you introduce yourself, give us a little bit about your background and what got you into the business you're in.
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm David Manaster, and I am the CEO of ERE Media. We are a company that the only reason we exist is to provide information for the talent acquisition profession. We do that through articles, free articles on our website, webinars, and conferences. And we run the ERE Recruiting Innovation Summit, which is a conference that focuses on the latest and greatest in TA. And that is what we do.
One of the things that I found very interesting about your background, and one of the reasons I am so honored to have you as a guest, is because you have been doing this a long time. You started ERE Media. So give us a little background on that.
So I started ERE Media in 1998. So been doing this forever. I had a lot more hair when I started doing this, and I was working at Monster at the time. So that was like my first job out of college was at Monster and met a lot of TA professionals, answered a lot of questions for them. And the internet was young then. So they had a lot of questions about how to use it in order to do their jobs and make life easier for them. And we would tell them that the answer to all things was Monster because we were salespeople and that's what we did. And so the idea there, the idea for ERE, the germs of ERE were really there must be a better way for TA professionals to get information about the profession. And so I went to my boss and I said, hey, like we should start like some sort of thing where TA professionals can get information from each other. And then we're not really interested in doing that here. We have a really great business, but I asked him then just if I could just do it on my own time. And he said, "Sure, yeah, do whatever you want on your own time. Just do your job." And so I did. So in the evenings, I started up a an email discussion list for recruiters to talk to each other. And it started growing, and eventually we added a newsletter to it. Eventually, we started up the conference, and things kind of just grew from there.
Going back to your monster days. Now, tell me a little bit too about what the industry looked like back then. So I was there as well. But from your perspective, you mentioned that you're an observer of our profession, right? And I love that because it's a great place to be. You know, you've got the eagle's view, right, of what's going on with talent acquisition.
I mean, it was a different world back then. It was people were still using faxes, pen and paper. I mean, it was a whole different ball game. And Monster and that era of Web 1.0 really changed everything. So everything went online, applications went online, volumes of applications skyrocketed. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like what we're seeing right now with AI. We're starting to see something very similar, just the next level up.
You know, I think you're right. Monster was, like, really one of the first job boards that I recall coming into the industry once the internet started.
I believe the first was OCC, the Online Career Center, which Monster later acquired.
Oh, okay, alright. I don't remember OCC. Huh, that's interesting.
It got acquired by Monster, and then, the Monster brand won out, so that not that many people remember it, but it was influential at the time.
And we were just kind of dialing into platforms at the time as well. And so everything was new to us, kinda like you said, kinda like what we're seeing right now with AI and the different tools that are coming out that are supported by AI.
The ResTrack Personic days.
Okay, so I was working for a Motorola, and Resumix was the very first ATS I ever used. And then Motorola developed their own ATS at the time, but then we were incorporating some of the new tools that came out, such as Brass Ring was one, a Career Builder, and Monster. Those seem to be the big three hot job boards, I guess we called them when we started utilizing the internet more. So it's very interesting. We hadn't started using Google yet too much. I mean, everything was still so new. What were some of the challenges, do you think, David, as we kind of like progress forward and once we started getting into a more transactional kind of business, utilizing job boards, what were some of the challenges that you saw from that your standpoint?
I mean, there's an evolution to all of this, right? I mean, went from again, pen, paper, fax machine to volume rising online because it was so much easier to post and it was so much easier to apply. And then that brought its own challenges. How do you sort through all these applications? And then you started getting into screening technologies and automation technologies. And each evolution of this kind of brings the next challenge that the next generation of software is solving. So it's been a constant evolution.
Oh, it totally has. And then when you were creating the conferences, what kind of initiated, I guess, the discussion around starting a conference?
The great thing about the way we started, and it was so organic, was that a community kind of sprung up around the conversations that were happening. People got to know each other without ever having met, which now seems perfectly normal, but back then was kind of a new thing. And it's almost hard to remember now. I mean, people used to meet by through friends and stuff, and now they meet through apps. It's a different thing. So a community kind of sprung up around the conversations that were happening and the readership of the newsletter, and there was a demand for people to kind of meet in person and start talking about it. So we were a small team, and we still are, and we kind of turned to each other. We're like, oh, we should really do a conference now. Just give people a chance to meet in person, meet some of the authors that they've been reading for so long. And that was what we did. And the first conference we ran was in 2001, and we just beat out the .com crash. And it was we never really looked back from there.
That's kind of interesting because, some of the conferences that I've attended are different conferences I mean, over the last probably 2 or 3 years are a little bit different conferences than what I recall from like say 10, 15 years ago. And of course, I think I was attending more as a recruiter, going with especially an internal recruiter is supporting the clients I was working for. I would go to conferences that were more product oriented. And we were trying to, of course, at the time, recruit either people we needed to hire, or if I was there as an independent contractor, I might be looking for some new clients, that type of thing. So the actual talent acquisition focus for these conferences, it seems to have blossomed, because I don't remember attending those types of conferences until, over the last few years since COVID. And now they're springing up all over. It is like the new water cooler, as people have called it, where everyone's going to meet, like you said, meet up with each other, meet with vendors, meet with customers, other people in their organization they don't normally get to chat with. So it's interesting to see these kind of this evolution like you're talking about. Where do you see this going now?
It's funny, I guess I had a little bit of a different take on it. It's there's definitely since COVID, I completely agree that there's a demand for being in person and meeting people and networking and just being around other people. And COVID's a couple years in the rear view now, but it's still people still feel that impact. Um, the big change that I see in the events lately, historically, There were less of them for sure, and there's a lot more now for talent acquisition professionals, but they are very vendor driven. The big growth in that space has been in events that are run by the vendors themselves, basically user conferences, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They're great if you're a user of a product, like, and there's a conference that will immerse you in that product and help you get the most out of it and educate you at the same time about the profession. That's good. But that's kind of where we were at when we started, when I was at Monster, we started this whole thing, is that there had to be kind of a better way to get that information. And even a lot of the independent conferences in the space, a lot of it's pay for play. And so there's more and more of that.
But as far as the first, I think, talent acquisition conference I went to was a LinkedIn conference, probably when LinkedIn was still new and they were starting their conferences. And I loved it. I thought it was great to collaborate with people. I thought the workshops were great, the things that we could learn that you did not learn in your current role, whether you were a contractor, whether you were a full-time employee working in-house for a company. I love that. So I think it's great to see this thing that about too is the changes that we've seen in this industry over the last, what, close to 30 years now, and what the conferences look like, or not just conferences, just but what this industry look like with respect to the internet and the job boards. And you mentioned the dot-com bust. What are some of the parallels that you're seeing, especially from your perspective? Some of the parallels between what we encountered with the innovation of the internet now with the innovation of AI.
Oh, it's the innovation of the internet on steroids. There was always, no matter how much of it was automated, there was always that human component that had to be running it all. And to an extent that will still continue to be true, but at a more basic level, AI is able to do a lot of the tasks that were associated with TA. The scheduling, even the screening. I mean, it's able to do a lot of those things. Not with 100% reliability, but humans didn't have 100% reliability to begin with, and the AI is only gonna get better from here.
The number of vendors that are attending these conferences, it's overwhelming for those of us who attend. It's like you're trying to keep things in check, right?
Well, there's a lot going on right now. I mean, right now there is a boom in venture capital money that is all going towards companies that are developing AI solutions. There is also all of the existing companies, every single one of which is calling themselves an AI company and is in active development of AI products, because if they don't, either nobody pays attention to them or they don't get funding. I mean, there's really, AI is perceived as the future, rightly or wrongly, and there, if you're not playing that game, you're just not a player right now. So every product, every company behind the product is going in that direction. The hype around it is next level, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. I mean, the hype about the internet was next level, and then the dot-com crash happened, and then 5 years later, the entire world had changed. So I do think this is similar in that sense, that I don't know if it's going, how rapidly it's going to happen, because there's also adoption curves that need to be worked out. I mean, companies aren't ready to just jump in and make wholesale changes. Some are, most aren't. They have complicated processes, they have complicated supply chains, they have complicated needs for people. And there's also a legal framework that hasn't been worked out yet. We have the first major lawsuit out there with Mobley and Workday that is, it is nowhere near resolution. They're just putting together their class action. They just got certified. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot that's going to be worked out between now and when we understand exactly how this has changed things.
So when you mentioned the dot-com bust and the recovery from that, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me that the recovery from that wasn't that long before we were kind of getting back on track again and kind of taking our technology in a different direction. Then we had Y2K that came up as well. That was kind of like in that same time frame. So we had a couple things going on. And I think just over time, this business became extremely compartmentalized. When I first started working for a client in-house, our role as a recruiter was a full desk position. I mean, from working with the hiring manager, you did your own sourcing, your own interviewing, your own screening, all that. And we called it full desk recruiting. And we kind of have had a little bit of a discussion around this, but when it comes to sourcing, that role seems to be some people say, no, it's going to stay. Some people say, no, it's going to go. Some people say, no, it's going to change. So but the sourcing piece of it really, even if it does go away, was short-lived. I don't remember the term sourcing really making a splash in this industry until maybe 10, 12 years ago. I think that the term kind of started, but we didn't really compartmentalize talent or recruiting, I should say, from sourcing. And now with all these new tools, where do you see, just based on the things that you're hearing from vendors, where do you see the roles of a talent acquisition practitioner going?
So sourcing specifically as a skill set is going nowhere. It is necessary, right? I mean, you have an open rec, you need to find candidates for it somehow. Some of it will be marketing driven and inbound, and some of it you'll have to go out and find the right people. But in the in the earlier days of the internet, especially once LinkedIn came around, there was a massive demand for people who had those search skills in order to dig up resumes and to dig up people and find people that were great for these roles that nobody else could. And that outcome is still something that is going to always be needed. I mean, you need to find the right people for these jobs, but more and more those that is becoming a skill of a recruiter or TA professional, and less of an independent career, because the softwares and the tools that they have are becoming so powerful. And they're only, I mean, there's been a big leap in the last couple of years with AI coming into the picture, that it's just becoming more of a skill set that all recruiters need, as opposed to like, hey, I sit here all day and generate a bunch of names and people that are good for this job. It's the software will largely do that for you, and then you go ahead and contact those people, close those deals.
And I've been saying for a while now that I think that we're going to go back to having the roles that we had before. Sourcing was a sole and separate part of talent acquisition, where we become talent advisors, consultants, recruiters again, doing more of that full desk role, being able to utilize some of these tools. The question I have though as we move forward is the people who have been doing the sourcing, who want to stay in this business, they're going to need to look at other opportunities inside of the industry. And who's going to kind of like, I guess, mentor them and take them to that next level and move them to a different role or train them? That type of thing isn't coming up. I don't hear a lot of that coming up yet. Are you hearing it from the conference side?
Not so much from conferences, but just, I mean, I talk to a lot of sourcers. I talk to a lot of recruiters every day, and I think that the sourcing community are some of the best and brightest in the space. I mean, they were the early technical adopters, and that's how they got that expertise. That's how that their careers evolved in that way. They're also, by and large, the early adopters of AI technologies and other technologies that are have more of opportunities right now. So I think that most of those folks will be just fine, because the people who are adopting these technologies now are the folks who are going to kind of be the winners in this next era of TA. A lot of them are also going to exit TA and take those skills elsewhere to other career paths. And they, again, because they are early adopters, because they are adept with technology, they're going to do quite well for themselves.
What are some of the other paths you're hearing about?
I've been hearing a lot about competitive intelligence, and because those skill sets are so similar.
I love that. That's fabulous. I think that's great news because people are so stuck in this, well, what's going to happen to my job? The idea that we can move into something else, even if it is moving out of talent acquisition, but taking your skills, again, transferable skills, and moving into a different role that would be super exciting as well, is I think it's fantastic.
And a lot of sources came from recruiting backgrounds to begin with, so they'll just go back into a more, full cycle role.
Yes, definitely. That's what I think is gonna happen with a lot of people. They will go back into a full unless they don't want to. If they are more the research type, the people who do like to just get in there and do the back end sourcing and research piece of it, yeah, a competitive analysis role would be great.
It's interesting though. So there is something I think about a lot is with when we're talking about obsolescence of careers, I think a lot about bank clerks. The ATM has been around for something in the neighborhood of 50 years at this point. It's not a new technology. And you'd think that there were less bank clerks in the world than there were 50 years ago. But for many, many years, for decades after the invention of the ATM, the number of bank clerks continued to rise in the United States, and it did. I think it just stopped rising and started dropping like a few years ago, like maybe like 2020, and it started falling from there. Um, and the reason is because, yeah, you go to a bank and there's like one clerk or two clerks like working in the bank, and the rest is like all handled by ATMs where they used to have 5 or 10, but there's a lot more banks than there used to be.
That's very true. I wonder why that is. More people, more
The
money.
the the employment has yeah, well, banks have become a bigger part of the economy,
Yeah. Oh, that's a very
and there's a bank
interesting
on every corner now, right?
right. Well, that's true, like Walgreens. So, I think it's interesting you bring that up as a comparison and analogy because when I was at another conference, one thing that came up, I met with Larry McAllister, and he had written the book, The Power to Transform. And in his book, he talks about pilots and how pilots don't really have to fly a plane anymore. The plane flies itself, but they still need to be in the plane to make sure that the plane takes off and lands correctly. And if there's any issues, kind of as a systems administrator. So it's not that the pilots have lost their positions have just changed. And I like that analogy too. So I think we're going to see a lot of the same with the talent acquisition industry. I was looking too, David, at your website earlier, and I love your website. There is so much on there. It's ERE.net. And you talk about some of the events that are coming up. You also talk about the training and webinars. There is a lot there. And I was very impressed with the website. And I think it would be great information to share with the community if they're not aware of it, because there is I mean, you guys have covered a broad spectrum, a broad scope of different topics that are talent led. So I love that.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's ERE.net. I spend most of my week at this point just researching and writing articles and information for TA professionals on there. And yeah, that's what we do.
I really appreciate you being on here though, because I think again, the conferences are picking up. ERE is one of the bigger conferences. You guys are growing and leaps and bounds from what I hear. And the fact, David, that you have been in this industry for so long and you have seen so many changes. It's great to have you on here to kind of compare notes and talk about some of the things that you've seen change over the years and what you expect to we have to look forward to. I mean, and if you look in your crystal ball, is there anything in particular that you think we might have to look forward to next year that we don't that we're not seeing now?
Yeah, I think that right now there's kind of an overhang from the overhiring and COVID, in the COVID era of recruiters that like everyone's just kind of working through, and it's resulted in a lot of pain for the profession. I'm hoping that that is going to be done next year. And just there's a lot of interesting technologies, a lot of interesting and kind of some of them are even kind of fun to play with and kind of kick the tires on AI products that are out there. And I think that that is as that changes the profession, I think it's going to be making the lives of a lot of recruiters easier. And that will be interesting to see.
Very good. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing, and hopefully we'll see you at the conference.
Thank you for having me, and this was fun.
All right, thanks.